startups are a little bit like rugby, you know. There are going to be some really shitty moments and bad things will happen. If you're planning to be the next ChatGPT, it's too late to be the next ChatGPT.
Brian Caulfield, Head of Scale Ireland, thank you very much for coming into us today.
No problem. Glad to be here, Mark.
So I was just trying to do the maths. I probably heard your name probably 9 years ago, just through different types of people in the circuit, and kind of similar to Martin Curley. I got introduced to him 7 years ago by Leo Clancy, and then I met him like on Wednesday, and then I finally actually get to kind of meet you as well. So it's lovely to meet you. So you've kind of had these kind of three careers from that kind of world of the startups, world of the VCs, and then this kind of feel of kind of ecosystem leader. Tell me about some of the good and the bad of the startups world.
I really enjoyed doing startups. You know, I think a lot of startup founders, I joke that they're grumpy people. You know, they see something being done badly, and they think there's got to be a better way. And I always enjoyed that kind of, if you like, creating the better way. And I also enjoyed very much the kind of the interaction with the people. And, you know, when you've got a really committed team, you know, I remember nights where maybe we had a big customer problem in the first business, and quite a number of the team would be kind of staying late to try and fix it. And probably at that stage, I wasn't a whole lot of help in fixing the problem, but you needed to be there as a leader. You don't kind of walk away and leave the team hanging. And you know, people will show huge commitment, and then maybe you sort it out and everybody goes to the pub and you have a pint, and I really enjoyed that kind of, I suppose, intensity at one level. And I kind of missed that when I moved into the VC world, because I would describe the difference between, if you like, startups and VC as being a little bit like the difference between kind of team sports and individual sports, you know. So startups are a little bit like rugby, you know. There are different roles, but it's a team sport and the team needs to perform together. VC is like the Ryder Cup. It's fundamentally an individual sport that's played in a kind of a loose team, but it is nonetheless an individual sport. So I initially, when I moved into VC, I kind of missed those kind of, if you like, team interactions that you have in a startup, you know.
And what were the main kind of learns that you had from your startup journey? Or in another way, if I could create your 20-year-old avatar now to go and start on that startup journey, was there any kind of key takeaways that you'd offer to other startup leaders going on the journey?
A few things I would say. I mean, one of the big things is that resilience is incredibly important. And in any startup, there will be things that happen that may not even be related to the company directly, that will really challenge that kind of resilience. I mean, I had a situation in my first company. I won't go into the details of what happened, but it had such a big impact that I went to counselling. Mainly because when I was with the counselor cared about me, and wasn't worried about the company or the staff or, you know, the investors or whatever. And in fairness to my main investor at the time was a guy called Shay Garvey, who at the time was a partner in Delta Partners. It was actually Shay who said to me, you know, this is so challenging that you should probably get some counselling, and it was really good advice. So that kind of resilience piece is huge. The other thing I would say is that people are both your biggest asset and your biggest challenge. And if I was kind of doing it all again, there are a few things that I would change. I'd be much more focused on, you know, if I don't fully believe in the potential of contribution of a hire, don't make the hire. Right, you know, as a friend of mine said about his business recently, if you're not super excited about the hire, don't make it, you know. And the other thing is that I would be much more intentional about culture, you know, to the extent of kind of saying to people when you're hiring them, you know, look, this is the culture that we have here, you know. It's a culture of respect for everyone. It's a culture that accepts diversity and if you like relishes diversity, but also a culture that doesn't take itself so seriously that it can't laugh at itself, you know. And if you don't believe in that sort of culture, then this probably isn't the place for you, you know.
Would you have exited people sooner?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, have you ever heard any leader say, I should have given that guy more time? It's almost always the, you know, the opposite. I should have taken action there much sooner, and you know, and it might be performance reasons, but it also might be kind of culture reasons, you know. A good friend of mine, Joe Drumgoole, has these 11 rules of how to run a really strong engineering team. And, you know, rule number 1 is fire the asshole. And rule number 11 is fire the asshole, right? Because somebody even who is very talented but extremely disruptive from a cultural or team perspective, they're probably not worth having around, even if they are very talented.
Which is a very difficult decision to make, particularly if you need to try to get a product to market or you need some kind of genius to bring, right? But it's the right decision. But yeah, it's always difficult. So when you're wearing the VC hat and you're becoming more of an individual and you've kind of changed sports, what was a successful company or successful founder? Did you see it when they walked in the door? Were you inspired by them? Was it their idea? What was there any kind of characteristics that those people had?
What I would say is that when you talk to venture capital investors about their mistakes, I would say those mistakes fall into 2 categories. People mistakes, you know, I never should have invested in that guy, you know, and timing mistakes. In other words, I don't think VCs get market opportunity wildly wrong very often, but what they do get wrong is the timing, and they invest too early, and you know the company is dead before the nascent market really starts to emerge, or they invest too late and there's already a US competitor that's raised $50 million and, has hired a stellar team and is executing well. So VCs definitely don't always get it right. In fact, they get it wrong more often than they get it right. But there are people that you come across from time to time, and it was actually one of the things I really liked about being a VC, where you're sitting there having a cup of coffee with a founder and you're kind of thinking to yourself, wow, this person is just so impressive, and you do come across people like that and teams like that.
Any kind of standout moments from your VC time where one or two people came in, they had the idea, you backed it, you felt excited about it, and it went on to be very successful, and then alternatively you're excited and it just blew up and you just were disappointed?
Yeah, I mean, obviously both. If I think of big successes, Movidius would be a classic example, and actually, Movidius ended up being one of the drivers of us IPOing Molten Ventures. Movidius built product for the best part of 10 years with essentially no revenue. And over the next 3 years, the revenue kind of went 1 million, 10 million, 40 million. That was a 13-year journey. And unfortunately, it's very, very difficult to fit that kind of a 13-year journey into a 10-year venture capital fund. So it was one of the big drivers to make us start thinking, well, you know what? Wouldn't it make more sense for us to be publicly quoted, where we can hold a portfolio company for as long as it needs, and where we're not restricted by fund size in terms of how much we can invest in a business, so that we can really, really back our winners. And I still believe in that. I think for really deep tech startups in particular, in the AI space, in semiconductor, in drug discovery, 10-year funds are problematic.
And when you think of your kind of favorite moment in that VC world, what would come to mind?
I think some of my favorite moments have been when you know that you've won a deal, where maybe it's a competitive deal, and a founder says to you, look, I've got 3 term sheets, but you're the guy I want. And the best terms are X and Y and Z. If you match those terms, the deal's yours. That's a great kind of personal validation. Of course, a validation of the firm as well. But being able to say, yeah, I won that deal. Similarly, some of the exits where you've maybe worked very, very hard, and maybe a company has been through some pretty tough times, and you sign the deal to sell the company, especially where maybe you've got founders that you've got an awful lot of respect for, where you feel that's great for them.
Did you try to get close? Because the world of VCs is probably a little bit like Marmite, right? In terms of people's approach. Did you try to get close and intimate with the companies that you built relationship with, or was it very much focused on maybe those people didn't want to get so close, it's more of a transaction? Or how did you, because I, from the recruiting perspective, I was always loving the kind of Jerry Maguire, Rod Tidwell kind of agent, and that always kind of inspired me to helping people get their jobs of their dreams, or
Yes.
really try to help kind of create a difference for someone's life, right? And that really gave me energy, and it still does. What's it like from that VC element? Because the happy after sounds fantastic, but you know, when you're also kind of directing them and kind of talking to them about their baby, and maybe their baby isn't as good looking as they think it is. So what do you do?
So I think the relationship between a VC and a founder is enormously important, and I would say in many respects the reason that I'm in VC is because of Shay Garvey, you know, and the relationship that I had with Shay Garvey in my first business, to me, was an enormously positive relationship. You know, Shay had techniques in terms of the running and the management of the business that I didn't have. And in addition to that, Shay was hugely supportive of us through, you know, a couple of fairly tough scenarios. And it was also always clear that Shay, if you like, cared about us as people as well, you know. And I would say that very much informs my approach to the relationship that I like to have with a founder. There are going to be some really shitty moments and bad things will happen. And the relationship I want to have with the founder is a relationship where, you know, if the shit hits the fan, I'm the first call that they make, right? And I know, you know, I'm going to say, oh
Give me
no.
some examples.
Well, it's you know, it might be the loss of your largest customer. It might be the resignation of, you know, a really important member of the team. It might be the death of a co-founder. You know, it can be
You've
all.
experienced them all.
I've experienced them all.
Do they call you when the best thing happens to them?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
probably.
yeah.
But I think that's, you know, the whole point is that they know I'm going to say, oh shit, but that I'll immediately move to, if you like, solution mode. Okay, let's think about how do we respond to this? What do we need to do immediately? You know, what do we need to do medium term? And that very quickly becomes the focus, and you know that it's not a blame fest. It's solution focused.
Please give me 30 seconds of your time. It blows my mind that only 9% of listeners actually subscribe to our podcast. I'm going to ask you one favor. If you like and enjoy this podcast, please can you subscribe? That one thing will really help us and the team get you the very best guests. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. What advice would you offer to companies now looking to try to raise? Obviously, Sean Blanchfield here last week with Regentic, he got 4 million plus. On the face of it, sounds really exciting for any company that's raising millions now in the world of AI. But it costs so much money to get into this type of game. You feel like any moat that's out there at the moment could probably be eroded within a blink of an eye. It feels like every 72 hours there's some type of significant announcement that would make you question the previous 6 months, if not 12 months. And I know I sound like the kind of boy that cried wolf, but it genuinely really feels like that. I'm 17 years in tech. I've never seen anything like this in terms of the volume of announcements and movement and activity. what kind of advice do you share on that?
Yeah, well, I suppose in many respects it's a little bit like 98, 99 in the kind of the dot com boom, you know. And if you think of a lot of the propositions that were getting funded at the time that weren't really much more than kind of web shops, you know, it was a little bit crazy. I think you're absolutely right about the AI space. It's probably too late for, if you like, if you're planning to be the next chat gpt, it's too late to be the next chat gpt. And I think if you're talking about an application that is really just a skin on ChatGPT or something like that, then you've got no moat. You know, you literally have no moat. From an AI perspective, I'm much more interested in companies where, you know, maybe they've built their own model or they have access to proprietary data resources that their competitors won't have.
Which is
You know,
difficult to guess, isn't it?
it is. It's not easy, but I think those are the kind of companies that will do well and have a moat. I mean, I think the other thing though is sometimes people misunderstand competition, right? And they misunderstand how you can defend against competition. And the example that I often use is a company called Ding, which went through a private equity transaction a couple of years ago at something like 300 million valuation. I was on the board there for a few years. That company resold mobile phone credit. Right now, it did it on a global basis. There's no incredible technology in that. The margins are pretty thin because the mobile operators, you know, they might give you 6, 7, maybe 10% margin on reselling their mobile credit. But what Ding did incredibly successfully was to build a large network of distribution points and a very large network of suppliers. They had something like 170 mobile operators. That's referred to as a positional advantage, and it's incredibly powerful because another mobile operator coming to the table, they want the partner who has the largest network of distribution points. And for a new distribution partner coming to the table, they want the partner that has the largest supply network, you know. So that's a positional advantage that's created by the network that you've got. It's not IP based, you know. It's not about the smarts of your best engineer. It's about executing really effectively on that strategy of building the network on both sides, you know.
So if we think about the ecosystem role, that kind of Ireland role, that kind of patriot role, to kind of position ourselves to really kind of stand on the shoulders of giants and do what we do well, where do you think government needs to go? What do you think we need to do, amplify, to do well, to do better? And you know, what is a good position? So I hear an awful lot about kind of ethical AI, privacy, be kind of that most trusted kind of source, leverage that. Obviously, from the data center perspective, you know, 21% of the power grid is in the world of data compared to like 3 or 4% in Europe. We've got 82 data centers here. There's a lot of stories from an AI perspective. We've John McCarthy coined the term artificial intelligence. So there's a lovely story and narrative around that. What do you think we need to do to go to this next level? Because it feels like there's a bit of a pivot in terms of how companies are making decisions where to put people and how they're going to make those decisions.
I think not just a pivot in terms of how they're making the decisions, but I think we're also going to see a period where decision making is slowed down pretty dramatically. In terms of the environment in Ireland, I think we have done an absolutely superb job of transforming the economy in my lifetime. I graduated in 1986, and I can't begin to tell you how much better Ireland is today than it was in 1986, both economically, socially, in practically every respect. So, and we've done that mainly on the back of a very, very strong education system, number one, but a policy focused on creating the best possible environment for FDI. We need to do the same now for indigenous, high growth, scalable technology businesses. And we're not really doing that yet. And I think part of it, to be honest, is that the knowledge and experience of how the startup ecosystem works within government is relatively limited. And what that often means is that schemes are introduced with the best will in the world, with genuinely good intentions to improve the environment, but the schemes are badly constructed, and as a result of that, just don't work. So in the short term, if I had one wish, it'd be, okay, well, let's take the KEEP scheme, which is about employee share ownership, and fix it. Fix it so that it works. Right now, it simply doesn't work. Let's take EIIS, which is all about driving essentially angel investment capital, and let's fix that so that it works. It also doesn't currently work. So I think there's a job of work to be done in terms of making those schemes work, making them simple and accessible. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is we've got a very, very weak angel capital market. There's something like 150 billion in cash in savings accounts in Ireland, earning 0.5% per annum, or whatever the current rate is. Imagine if we could take 1 billion a year from that pool and inject it into investment in, early stage startup companies. That would be absolutely transformational, because the largest total amount invested in any 1 year in the Irish economy through both venture capital and angel investment is about 1.6 billion. So like a billion from that pool of savings would be literally transformational.
So it's about changing habits, isn't it?
It's about changing habits, but it's also about incentives, and right now the incentives really aren't there. People think there are incentives, but when you actually start to kind of do the sums, you sort of realize, actually, that's not much of an incentive.
Yeah.
But it is also about, I suppose, changing mindsets for sure.
Yeah, and I feel that's education and explaining literacy and kind of working through to that. We've got the UK last week with rolling out the kind of new AI strategy, new government or kind of action plan. Feels like they've kind of moved away from kind of ethical safety trust to more action doing, startup, invest here, scale, will grow. And it feels to be more, and probably where they're at in terms of their economy. What does Ireland need to do? Is there any plan that you think we should stick to what we're doing at the moment? Or how much of that is a threat? What do we need to be thinking about?
Well, we definitely need to be looking at the UK as a threat. And, obviously, yeah, I think Brexit was an absolute disaster for the UK. And, chickens are certainly coming home to roost already. But the other side of that is that it has freed them from a lot of EU regulation, which limits what you can do in terms of incentives. And they're absolutely taking advantage of that. And, for example, there's what's known as the Mansion House Agreement, where the government essentially said to the pension funds in the UK, okay, we're going to remove the cap on pension funds. That's a huge win for pension providers in the UK. But the quid pro quo is that you guys invest into UK innovation, and it has led to billions literally being poured into funds, in particular, actually, to support the research output from universities, in Ireland, the pension funds just simply do not invest in venture. They hardly invest in Ireland, let alone in venture in Ireland. So there are some things that we absolutely need to keep doing. We need to build better and stronger acceleration and incubation programs. We need to improve the accessibility of capital. We need to make, the schemes, as I said, that are there work better, and we need to radically simplify them. We also need to do, I would say, a bit more work on clustering and identifying where we have kind of nascent clusters of companies with similar technology, and really double down on those, because those kind of clustering effects are very, very, very powerful. I mean, if you look at Galway as an example, a lot of US medtech and devices companies set up facilities in the Galway area, and that has generated a lot, ultimately, of really, really interesting spin outs, So identifying those areas of strength and looking to double down on them, I think, is hugely important.
How do we create this mindset that you're going to scale? You're going to go on this journey, you're going to start up the startup, and you're scaling. What does that involve, and how would you go about doing it?
So I think the first thing again kind of comes back to incentives, like for example, if you want to hire really, really talented, high quality people from the FDI base, right? So people who know how to manage a large customer service operation, or, how to scale a sales team to hundreds of people. Equity incentives are absolutely essential for those for those kind of people. So you want to be able to take them from the FDI companies and inject them into scaling Irish businesses. I think an awful lot of Irish businesses that have scale ambitions fail on two counts. They don't raise enough money, right? And I think that's partly a consequence of how difficult it is to raise early capital in the Irish market. Founders kind of get a bit gun shy, and they become wary of the challenge of going out to raise a lot of money, and probably they've been over diluted early in the process, and think, what, maybe it's better if we take money off the table. So they don't raise enough, and they don't hire as well as they should, hiring those people that I was talking about who really know how to operate at scale is absolutely essential, So those would be the two big things I would say.
They're two very, very important ones. The hiring for me, you always should be hiring someone better than yourself in the role that they're going to do. That is, and then the mindset of just going big and not being scared of that. I remember a founder telling me, it's like, Mark, it's just as easy to work on a really big problem that it is to work on a really small problem. I'm still going to spend 80 hours a week working on the problem. Just turns out that it's big.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the other thing I think that founders need to be really aware of from a scale perspective, I think companies change pretty dramatically during their lifetime, and there are a couple of crucial inflection points. One of those inflection points is the sort of the point at which, okay, we now have a product that we know the market wants. We know why customers buy our product. We've moved up the sales learning curve. We know what messages sell. We know what our ideal customer profile is and who within the organization we want to sell to. If you like, we're now comfortable that we've got kind of the playbook to scale from a sales perspective. Unfortunately, the people who are really, really good at figuring that stuff out are often not the people who are really, really good at managing at scale, and they probably don't even enjoy managing at scale. And that's a very, very challenging inflection point for founders and for a management team, because it may be that there are people who were crucial to bringing you along that journey to that point, but are not the right people to take the business to the next level.
Which is really difficult to do when they've put in so much discretionary effort on the journey. And then you now to see, okay, now it's time to get off the horse. We're going on the next journey. And then being honest to say, well, can those people take me on that journey? And I admire how those CEOs and decision makers do that, but do it in a compassionate, empathetic way. Brian Caulfield, Chairman of Scale Ireland, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark. Really enjoyed chatting to you, and I'm sure we'll run into each other again.
Hello, my name is Mark Kelly, founder of AI Ireland. We're passionate about collaboration and sharing the incredible stories behind every AI journey. That's why we're always looking for guests to join our in-person AI Ireland podcast experience. If you're working on innovative AI projects or have a story that can inspire others, we want to hear from you. This is your chance to share your insights, experiences, and ideas with a really vibrant community that's as excited about AI as you are. So if you're ready to be part of this conversation and help shape the future of AI in Ireland, please get in touch today. We can't wait to collaborate with you. Thank you.